Greetings and welcome to Caritas Focus. My name is Flavia Kunihira, your host. For a long time, Uganda and its neighboring countries have suffered conflicts and regional turmoil that have disrupted the development, prosperity, and stability. In addition to advancing peace and stability within Uganda, Caritas Uganda has played a part in resolving conflict and preventing conflict escalation. Today on the show, we host the Assistant Humanitarian and Emergency Response Coordinator Caritas Uganda, Mr. David Adong, with whom we're going to discuss about peace building and conflict resolution in the humanitarian context. You're most welcome, Mr. David.
Yeah, thank you so much, Flavia. As you have clearly said, my name is David Adong, and we're here to discuss issues pertaining peace building and conflict resolution in Uganda and beyond the boundaries of Uganda. I thank you.
Thank you very much. First and foremost, what is the mission of Caritas and the principles it upholds in regarding peace building and conflict resolution?
Yeah, thank you so much. Caritas Uganda is actually a development arm of the Catholic Church, and we are implementing programs in humanitarian emergency response and also handling the aspect of peace building. And we work with the international principles, national principles, and the principles of the Catholic Church. And you realize that we uphold the highest level of inclusivity, impartiality, transparency, and local ownership, recognizing the importance of all the stakeholders, both the vulnerable and also the duty, the duty holders and the duty bearers. And that is cardinal in our quest for peaceful conflict resolution. And we talk about a durable solution for the conflicts that our neighbors have faced. Thank you.
What are some of the key regions Caritas Uganda is actively involved in peace building efforts?
Yeah, Caritas Uganda actually operates in all the 19 dioceses of the Catholic Church. But for the case of this discussion, for the interest of this discussion, the humanitarian emergency response is being implemented in Bidibidi refugee settlement, and that is West Nile. We are partnering with Caritas Fort Portal, Caritas Hoima, who are in the Caritas family, and they are implementing humanitarian emergency response in the refugee settlements of Ishakatu and Changwali. So those are basically the areas that we are implementing the humanitarian emergency response.
What inspired Caritas Uganda to be able to implement peace building efforts in these regions that you have mentioned?
Yes, in our operations, we have encountered quite a number of experiences since we interface with the refugees in the settlements and also the host communities in the settlements. You realize that the refugee influx is increasing day by day due to conflicts across the borders. But also that does not rule out the conflicts within the border, which are realized due to the limited resources within the boundaries of Uganda. For example, in Bidibidi, the overgrowing number of refugees has put too much pressure on natural resources. For example, land, firewood, that has led to indiscriminate cutting of trees, and also water. So you realize that there are conflicts that are rising in between the refugees and host communities, and then the refugees, among the refugees themselves, due to the fact that the conflict across the border in South Sudan has emanated due to tribal conflicts, besides the political instabilities. You realize that even the tribes in South Sudan are conflicting amongst themselves. So in the settlements we have the Nuers, we have the Dinkas, among others. So those conflicts have still come to, have been brought to the settlement. So our interest is to promote a peaceful coexistence of these tribes of refugees in the settlements, but also promote a peaceful coexistence in between the refugees and host communities, so that they are able to amicably share the limited resources within their reach, while appreciating, staying together and all that kind of thing.
Okay, thank you very much. What are the primary approaches Caritas Uganda employs in ensuring peaceful initiatives within the settlement, but also with the host communities?
Yeah. As Caritas Uganda, we actually come up with the most appropriate approaches that leave no one behind and also do no harm to the communities. And interestingly, we have realized that making the communities to appreciate instances of peaceful coexistence is of paramount, and therefore we instituted committees. We have peace building committees at the grassroots level, whom we have been able to build their capacities so that they are able to handle, conflict resolution by themselves. Remember when we talked about the principle of local ownership, they should be able to own measures of resolving their own conflicts, because they are the best people who understand their conflicts. So we have instituted committees, we have built their capacities on the various approaches on conflict resolution, one of which is dialogues. They engage in dialogues at the community level, and they also engage on mediation. They are able to mediate, conflicting parties within the community, to the extent that after the resolution, they can, hold the party together, toss glasses together and coexist. That is important. But also, we have been able to use the approach of negotiation. I give an example of Bidibidi refugee settlement, where there is limited land. Much of the land is owned by the host community, landlords, and due to the fact that we are looking at the aspect of sustainability, how to enable refugees to sustain their own living, and yet they don't have the land. We have gone into the instances of holding a negotiation, because sometimes refugees hire land, but the conflicts arise due to costs of hire, and also sometimes the landlord gives the land, and when the refugee has planted crops, the landlord comes and reclaims for the land. So we have engaged in negotiation together with the Office of the Prime Minister, which is mandated by principle to do that. We've built partnership with them, and we've done a lot of engagement with the landlords and also the host communities. And you realize that this has, appreciated instances of peaceful coexistence, sharing of limited resources with the refugees, due to the fact that the policy of rehope strategy came to play also. When we come with a program, 70% of that program goes to the refugee, and then 30% would go to the host community. So that has also contributed to a peaceful coexistence, because the host community is able to see benefit come their way also, despite the fact that 70% goes to the refugees. But then they're able to realize it. But then today, of course, when we talk about the rehope strategy, most agencies, there's a lot of debate on it, and I think it has been put on hold. But that does not deter our quest for peace building and conflict resolution in the refugee settlements where we're working in.
You talked about dialogue and reconciliation as one of the approaches that Caritas Uganda is employing. Could you give us an in-depth understanding of how you engage the local leaders and the stakeholders? You talked about Office of the Prime Minister. Could you expand more on the steps that it actually takes to have these dialogues and reconciliation meetings and to ensure that they are actually successful?
Yeah, thank you so much. We have been able to successfully undertake dialogues at both the community level and national and at the international level, if I may say. At the community level, as I indicated earlier, that we have been able to institute structures that have taken up the mantle of conducting dialogues. But then before they conduct these community dialogues, they do a lot of fact findings at the community level so that they are able to equip themselves with a lot of information regarding the prevailing conflicts within that community. And as community structures, they are able to, together with the police, the local council institutions, and then the refugee welfare committee, they are able to sit together and amicably engage communities in these prevailing conflicts. And I can say proudly that those structures that we have been able to institute have been able to handle conflicts amicably at that level. They have been able to exclusively instances of land conflict, instances of domestic violence, instances of struggle for firewood, stray animals, and all that kind of thing. That they have been able to receive their reports. They were able to engage accordingly. But then also, we have built capacities of communities at the group level, because that is our entry point. We have built capacities of groups to understand the intricacies of conflict resolution and management. And also, we have put to them that in case of any conflict, they should not be able to sit on it. They should be able to report to the peace building committees or to the local council leadership, so that it's able to they are able to handle it amicably. But interestingly, there are some conflicts that are beyond the jurisdiction of our structures, that we have also been able to build the capacity of our structures to establish a referral pathway. For example, if it is rape, they cannot be able to handle it. It's beyond their mandate. If it is defilement, that is beyond their mandate. If it is murder, that's beyond their mandate. So they are able to establish a referral pathway. They refer it to police, maybe to the local council leadership, and who are able to also refer, so that conflict is handled amicably. At the national level, we have conducted quite a number of national dialogues where we focus on particularly the conflict in South Sudan. We have understood the conflict is due to political interests, but also triggered by tribal conflicts in South Sudan. So we realized that there are key people who are influential in as far as conflict resolution is concerned, and those are the religious leaders, the cultural leaders, the civil society leadership, the youth, and women. So we have, like last year, we conducted a national dialogue where we invited religious leaders from South Sudan, cultural leaders from South Sudan, women leadership from South Sudan, the youth leadership from South Sudan, and also from the refugee settlement, and the religious leaders within the boundaries of Uganda, so that they are able to put on table a reference point, a learning point to the religious leaders across the border of South Sudan. Together, they discussed on a durable solution for the conflict in South Sudan and came up with a communique, which they agreed that must be delivered to His Excellency Salva Kiir in South Sudan. And all the leadership, of course, Salva Kiir and Riek Machar, together with Mrs. High Excellency Madame Garang, we did deliver that this year, spearheaded by His Grace Odama, to the Embassy of South Sudan in Uganda. And we strongly believe that His Excellency Salva Kiir and and the team were able to receive our communique. And in our communique, we're pointing out instances of voluntary return of refugees. If they feel they should return with dignity and safety. And then, let me expound on that. And then, when they go back, they must be reintegrated in the communities. And if the situation is still dire, they have a right to be repatriated or resettled in any place safe for their lives and property. And that is the principle that we uphold. In our recommendations, we categorically highlighted that to the government of South Sudan, and I think that is how we've been able to bring on board all the stakeholders to discuss the significance of a peaceful resolution in South Sudan.
Thank you very much, David. That was really very broad, and I would want us to narrow it down a bit. What has been the impact on the communities, but also the impact on the brand or the name of Caritas Uganda when it comes to initiating these peace building efforts?
Yeah, in the areas that we have been able to work in, I give an example of BDBD refugee settlement. You realize you can now observe instances of peaceful coexistence, sharing of limited resources like land. The host community surrendered land because we're engaged in consolidated farming. And for you to do that, you must get land from the host community landlords. They have been able to surrender land at no cost. For your own information, the only incentive that we give is the tree seedlings planted in the land. So as the refugees and selected host communities are able to cultivate the land, they also weed the trees that in a long run the landlords will be able to benefit from. But importantly to note, they have been able to surrender land to the refugees. So that is very important. And then two, we have realized reduced instances of conflicts emanating from limited resources, like firewood, water. People are now able to, coexist and share the limited resources. And I can vividly say it's a contribution. It has been contributed also by Caritas Uganda, much as other stakeholders are also engaged in. But then it's important to note that we are very aggressive in as far as that is concerned. Our committees are operating effectively and efficiently at the community level, and we have been able to realize that. And then also at the community level, because of the sensitizations that we've been able to do, today they are not able to keep quiet within a conflict. They report any instance of a conflict. Unlike previously, where people would sit on a conflict, even a grave conflict like defilement, the community would sit and keep quiet with it, But today, when they hear, they are able to tip and undertake that amicably. Let me talk about our staff, because conflict resolution begins with yourself. We've been able to build the capacity of our staff on conflict resolution and management, but also on how they conduct themselves, because they can be a cause of conflict in a community. How do they approach a community? How do they handle conflicts in the community so that they don't escalate? That has been, realized, and I can proudly say that our staff are, upholding the highest level of dignity in as far as the implementation of humanitarian emergency response is concerned, and also in as far as peaceful resolution and conflict management is concerned at the community level.
So we have talked about conflict and conflict resolution, but to our viewer out there, what is conflict?
Oh, I don't know. We are dealing with a community that speaks various languages, and I don't know how to put it. But in English, actually, a conflict is a disagreement in between two or more parties. And those disagreements can arise due to a common interest. For example, land, firewood, say any other limited resource. It could be relief or something of the kind. It is usually caused by an interest. I don't want to call it a selfish interest, but it's usually an interest. I give an example of political conflicts. All those conflicts are vested on personal interests. The other one has an interest of power. The other party also has an interest of power. And by so doing, the two will struggle to attain something that is common, and that is power. So to avoid that, there must be a common understanding that the two parties can strike so as to coexist. If, say, it is a limited resource, how best can the limited resource be shared? Or can one party get any other alternative other than that? It's all about, striking a balance in between the two conflicting parties. So it is a disagreement in between two parties or among several parties. That is how I can be able to probably elucidate it.
Thank you very much, David. So, since you've described to us what a conflict is, how does Caritas Uganda identify and assess conflict dynamics within the community itself?
Wow. Actually, we use a common analogy that when you continue giving a person a fishing net, you increase on the dependency syndrome. But when you train a person how to fish, you'd have supported that person. Relating it to this, we have been able to build the capacity of communities so that they're able to sustain instances of conflict resolution and management. And of course, we have instituted structures at the community level, built their capacity, and also you see the relationship. The community that is aware and having a lot of information on conflict, able to report to the structures that we've been able to institute. And then the structures are able to engage in dialogues, engage in mediation, negotiation, and all that. For the conflicts that are beyond their jurisdiction, they are also very aware that they should be able to establish those referral pathways and refer these conflicts there. So we have been able to identify these conflicts. Like communities themselves come up to identify the conflicts, report the conflicts to the peace committees. The peace committees are able to do a lot of fact findings also, engage in dialogues, and those conflicts are handled amicably. I hope I've answered your question.
Yes. We have been talking about conflict resolution, meaning the conflicts are already there and we're trying to resolve them. But what strategies does Caritas Uganda employ to stop the escalating of these conflicts within our country, more especially in the communities that we serve?
Yes. Yeah, this is closely related to what I said before, that it's important, first of all, in any engagement that you have, the community that you're dealing with must be aware. Today, we do a lot of advocacy. We do a lot of advocacy for instances of conflict resolution. We do a lot of dialogues, as I have highlighted. We engage key stakeholders within the country. We have been able to engage civil society. We've been able to engage religious leaders, and also bringing on board religious leaders across the board. Those are the strategies that we've been able to employ, besides instituting structures at the community level and building their capacity. So I think it is something that takes back the power to the communities themselves to be able to identify these conflicts, report the conflicts, and handle the conflicts amicably. That is the best strategy that for us we think, other than us as Caritas Uganda going to handle communities that concerned or that are coming out from the communities. So we feel our work is to guide, to provide guidance to the communities to handle their own conflicts, and that breeds the aspect of sustainability. Tomorrow, in case Caritas Uganda withdraws, you find that the structures that we've been able to build will continue to handle those conflicts. And also, we have been able to build that network in collaboration in between the structures that we've been able to institute and existing government structures. And of course, the structures that have been instituted at the refugee settlement. The refugee welfare committees are there. So we have ensured, we have made sure that our structures are not working in isolation. They are working with government, local governments, they are working with the refugee welfare committees. So that has enabled us to take back the power to the people and empowered the people to handle their own conflicts. And they appreciate that. They appreciate that. And that explains today why we are able to, at least within the groups that we're working in, we're able to realize a very peaceful coexistence, because we have also been able to do the aspect of integration. Not only isolating refugees, we bring on board the host communities together with the refugees, so that at the group level, they're able to appreciate coexistence and give a learning point to others that, oh, the other group A is able to work together. Refugees and host communities are working together. So why not us? You know, when we move out to other communities or other zones within the settlement, they're able to have a reference point in what we already have and be able to appreciate, you know, how to uphold the instances of integration, reporting, and all that. That is, I think, what we've been able to do.
Thank you, David, for your submission. We are still discussing peace building and conflict resolution that are done by Caritas Uganda. Let's take a short break and we'll be right back.
Thank you.
Welcome back from the break. We are still with David Adong, the Assistant Humanitarian Emergency Response Coordinator, Caritas Uganda, discussing how Caritas contributes to peace building and conflict resolution in Uganda, and more so within the communities that it serves. So, David, how does Caritas Uganda prioritize the needs of the refugees, internally displaced persons, and marginalized communities in peace building efforts?
Yeah, thank you so much, Flavia. Caritas Uganda prioritizes these needs in that we do a lot of consultation with the communities, because there are quite a number of needs in the communities. There are quite a number of needs. So we engage the communities, take them through the various needs, and come up with the most pressing needs. But of course, interestingly, we also try to integrate the aspect of peace building. What are these needs that we can be able to give the communities that promote the instances of peace building and conflict resolution, or reduce on the instances of conflicts in the community? So you realize that with such an engagement, communities are able to tell us the needs, identify the most pressing needs, and we package our program and then respond accordingly. For example, we've been able to equip youth with skills, because we also realized that the cardinal contributors of conflicts are youth. When they're unemployed, when they don't have alternative things to do, they will always engage in conflicts. So we have been able to identify youth at the settlement level and also host community level, and equip them with the skills. So we've been able to facilitate them in vocational training institutes within the proximities of the settlements. For example, there is Moyo Technical Institute, among others. And with the skills that these youths have been able to get, at least they've been able to exhibit them to realize some incomes. For example, we've trained them on bricklaying, We've trained them on carpentry and joinery. We've trained them on welding, tailoring, depending on the needs that actually the skills that one identifies. We don't enforce when it also comes to skills. And then after they have been given skills, we give them the startup kits to enable them to exhibit their skills. That is cardinal in as far as peace building is concerned. You realize they're able to coexist, refugees and host communities coming up with, say, a carpentry workshop. They engage and realize some incomes together. That reduces instances of conflict. We've also been able to establish IGS, most especially for women, train them on soap making and all that kind of thing. They're able to realize monies and therefore reduce on instances of, say, overdependency at the household level, which also results into conflict, a man and a woman and all that. When a woman is able, a wife or a woman is able to realize her own money, she's able to get requirements like pads or that kind of thing, and reduces on the burden imposed on a man. So that also contributes to reduction of likely conflicts. And then we've been able to put together beneficiaries in groups, both refugees and host communities, trained them on sustainable agriculture. For us in Caritas, we call it farming God's way. Sustainable agriculture, climate smart agriculture. Train them, provide them with inputs, and there's what we call consolidated farms, where we identify about 25 households represented by individuals, come in a group, identify land, like I had told you earlier, that we through the Office of the Prime Minister, negotiate for land, give them, say, 50 acres for two groups. I mean, each group having 25 acres, so that they are able to produce their crops, collectively do market, and then sell and realize some money, some incomes for themselves. That at least contributes to reduced instances of conflict. And then we have come up with, earlier on I talked about an initiative called Ekoka. It's a solar cooker. We've been able to provide beneficiaries at reduced subsidized prices. And those that have been able to acquire them have now do not move for long distances to look for firewood. Remember, there is a protection issue there. When, say, a lady, a young girl, moves for a long distance in the bush to look for firewood, along the way, some other boys can attempt to assault them sexually, and that puts them in danger. So by coming up with this Ekoka, the solar cooker, somebody is able to just take a solar panel outside under the sun, charge the cooker, cook her food, and it has reduced the vulnerability that women were faced with in the settlement or in the host communities. So basically, that's how we've been able to draw priorities in the needs. But of course, whereas we identify these needs from the communities themselves, we also do a lot of consultation with the technical wing at the district local government, the Office of the Prime Minister, because they also understand the dynamics within, the jurisdiction of our area of operation. So we do a lot of consultation with them. For example, the district agricultural officer, production, forestry, and all that, they're able to advise us accordingly, and we come up with our plans in line with the guidance that we have been able to get from the technical team and the beneficiaries themselves.
Thank you very much, David. Caritas is really doing quite a lot of work from your submission. However, there are some rainy days that you experience in the implementation of peaceful coexistence initiatives. What are those challenges? What are those rainy days that you have encountered in this promotion of peace building?
Yes. First of all, with conflicts, communities have varying interests, and as a human, human beings by nature have selfish interests, and by the fact that we have selfish interests, it drives us into conflict, and that makes us to often realize these conflicts from the community, and it is continuous. That is why in our programming we thought it better to have a local ownership of these conflicts, so that they understand their conflicts, come up with measures to resolve the conflicts, and then be sustainable, because we are not about to say we're going to have a community without conflicts, because by nature, human beings by nature have selfish interests. The other challenge is the limited resources that we have in as far as finances are concerned. There is overwhelming demand in as far as alternative measures are concerned that would be able to undertake to reduce the root causes. When you're attacking a problem, you go for the root cause of the problem. There's reason as to why, for example, youth engage in conflicts. It's because they don't have alternative measures. But when you equip a youth with skills, that youth will be engaged and will be able to realize some money at the end of it all. So we have limited resources that have not enabled us to give alternative measures to all those who may be engaged in these conflicts. For example, women, quite a number of women would require income generating activities. But then due to limitation, we are unable to do that. Agricultural inputs, talk about it. A coca is quite expensive. We're giving it at a subsidized price of 700,000 Uganda shillings. So much as we have gone ahead to say households can have installment payment within a period of 2 years, but still, given the fact that a number of our households are living below $1 a day, realizing money that can enable them to acquire coca is quite dire. It's quite dire. So if we would get more money, more funding, that would enable us to reduce, to subsidize on the price of a coca to say 300. Most importantly, a majority of households would be able to get this. So the cardinal challenge is finances. And then two, of course, attitudes. Every community has attitudes. So there are some communities today, you've resolved the conflict, tomorrow they're again in the same conflict and all that kind of thing. So we need to work hard to sensitize communities to change the attitude. Because there are some people who feel by nature they should be in conflict. So we should be able to unlock that attitude so that they're able to appreciate a peaceful coexistence. Of course, that is in line with the heterogeneity, heterogeneous nations that we have. We can't compare ourselves with, say, a country like say, Ethiopia, maybe, which has few ethnicities. Or you can talk about a European country, which is a monolithic nation. So for us, we're heterogeneous, comprised of quite a number of cultures, cultural groupings and all that, who have varying interests. So when you bring them together, for example, now the Nuer, the Dinka, the what, there are always likely conflicts of the same. But then in our programming, we're trying to continue with sensitization for purposes of peaceful coexistence. They should be able to appreciate the fact that we are Africans. We are created by God, and we are the same. We are one people. That's in our programs. We try to do that, and of course, bringing on board the aspect of church. Our religious leaders are doing a lot because we work with the church to preach the gospel of oneness. People should appreciate the fact that we come from the same person, and that is the creation of God. When you trace Adam and Eve, so we came from that lineage. So that is one thing that the church is trying to preach aspects of love, forgiveness, and kindness. So basically, that is what we do as Caritas. And then you had asked for...
How do we address these challenges? For example, you talked about limited financing, whereby you're only able to train a certain group of people. So how have you assessed the impact of the training on a small number of people to a larger group of people? How have these people been able to transfer the knowledge to impact a larger group of people? How does Caritas ensure that that comes into play?
Yeah, a creation of a reference point, a creation of a learning ground is what we do. First of all, we have TOTs that I told you are committees that have TOTs. Those are trainers of trainees. Trainers of trainees. Those are the committees that we have been able to institute. The peace committees have continuously gone to the communities to preach the gospel of peace, peaceful coexistence. They have continuously done that. They have been able to also cascade the training to their groups, because some of them belong to groups. They have been able to cascade the trainings to the groups. They have been able to, engage in dialogues, and from that engagement, the conflicting parties are able to appreciate the fact that there is always need to resolve conflicts, because there's nothing that they benefit from, persistency in conflict, apart from likelihoods of hate, death, fights, and all that. There's no benefit. There's no benefit. It is all death, which when you look at it, you don't benefit anything. So as a package, our committees always, during engagement, are able to tell the groups, the communities, and we can realize some instances of peaceful coexistence. Like whatever I did before, I said before, that limited resources are shared. People are sharing groups. People are sharing gardens. Landlords are able to surrender land to the refugees. And I think it's an indication that there is some kind of outcome or results from our engagements. And from the awareness that communities that our peace committees have been able to reach out to, I think there's been a gospel preached. People are able to share information at their families and all that kind of thing, which we feel if we had capacity in as far as funding is concerned, we would be able to diversify our interventions to also all the zones within the settlements that we're working in. And I think it would create a model refugee settlement, a model host communities, a community where people appreciate peaceful coexistence and promotion of peace. That is what I think, we would be able to really achieve.
Thank you very much, David. What opportunities exist for Caritas to work together with stakeholders and coordinate peace and conflict issues?
Yeah. First of all, Caritas is a development arm of the Catholic Church. And as a church, we have structures. In the 19 dioceses of the Catholic Church in Uganda, we have structures. And you realize that within those structures, we have religious leaders. And communities, Christians, always listen to religious leaders. So when we use the structures of religious leaders to preach the aspect of peace, people will live with peace. People will live with peace, because it is stated in the gospel, also in the Bible. All the whatevers talk about peace and love. That is cardinal. And as Caritas Uganda, we strongly believe in the principle of love and peace. We strongly believe in that. And then too, we have an opportunity of very, very outstanding leadership that is tested in as far as peace building is concerned. I give an example of His Grace Odama. His Grace Odama has oftentimes been engaged in dialogues. For example, in between the government of Uganda and Konyi in Garamba, he was engaged in that, and that was something that was really so difficult to attain. But at the end of it all, today we can talk about peace in Uganda due to such engagements. And he does not work alone. He also has a team which is also linked with government. So that is an opportunity that will enable us to engage government, bring government on board, and frontier the aspects of peace and conflict resolution in the country and across the country. And then, of course, still, as a Catholic Church, we're universal in nature. You realize that we are in Uganda. There is a Catholic Church in South Sudan, which Catholic Church is not working in isolation. It also works with the Pentecostal churches, works with the Anglican churches, works with the Muslim or the Islam churches. I mean the Islam whatever mosques. Sorry to say that. the mosques. So when they bring on board all the categories of those religious leaders, we are able to constitute a common what? A common voice. A common voice that advocates for peace and reconciliation within the country and also outside the country. That is why, of recent, we're able to present a communique to the embassy of South Sudan to be delivered to His Excellency Salva Kiir and then the team, His Excellency Riek Machar and High Excellency Mrs. Garang. So we have that formidable team that also has, a partnership with the religious leaders because they are not working in isolation. So you realize that as Caritas Uganda, we have our links to the religious institutions. That is why we brought on board the religious institutions, the religious leaders from South Sudan and also within here. And by so doing, we're able to come up with a common voice that was put in a communique that was delivered. And then, of course, government. Caritas does not work in isolation. We have built partnership with the Office of the Prime Minister. We build partnership with the local governments. We build partnership with the central government. We talk about the RDCs and the rest of it, who were brought on board in that dialogue. And if you could look at that communique, we had very significant recommendations that were geared towards a durable solution for the conflict of South Sudan.
Thank you very much, David. In summary, in like brief, we do have elections coming up in less than 2 years in Uganda. What would you communicate to the communities, the government, and all the different stakeholders to maintain and amplify the works of Caritas in promoting peace and stability within the country?
Yeah, thank you so much. There are two countries we're talking about here, 2 or 3. We're talking about Uganda, but in December this year, South Sudan is going into elections. And usually, when elections are conducted, as I told you, humans by nature have interests. When your interest is not met, then there is a likelihood of that interest resulting into a conflict, culminating into a conflict. So that is where our interest is. Before looking at Uganda, we are going to have several engagements with the leadership of South Sudan to conduct a free and fair election and respect the will of the people. Because decisions that are taken by the people are decisions that should be able to drive the country into its development. And once we respect that, then we are going to have peace. we're going to have peace. Instances of that of conflict have always risen when the decisions of the people, the choices of the people have been usurped by the minority decision. And when the minority decision takes play. So it's important to do that. Getting back to Uganda, Uganda is a growing country. And as Caritas, we should be able to learn a leaf from the countries that have already grown in their democracy. What is that they were able to do that they reached the level where they are today? And I think it's important for us as a country to adopt that, and as far as democracy is concerned. One, we should be able to exhibit transparency of the highest order besides periodic elections. The elections should be transparent, and the powers must be given to the people to take their decisions. And it's important that the institutions that have been charged with the responsibility of undertaking elections, for example, should exhibit the highest level of impartiality, the highest level of independence, the highest level of transparency, and be accountable to the people. That is very important. Create platforms or grounds where people are able to exhibit their choices in as far as elections is concerned. One, they should be able to listen to the candidates that have been given the mandate to campaign, and by listening, be able to take a very significant decision to elect the leadership, because the leadership that we elect for the country will determine the kind of country that we have tomorrow for our children. It's today that we need to build a country that we shall be able to leave to our children. If we destroy it today, then our children, those who are unborn, and those who will come after those who are unborn, will not find a good place to stay in. So it's today that we should be able to build. And therefore my message is, institutions of government, individuals should appreciate peaceful coexistence. We are in a multi-party dispensation. And amidst that, we should be able to appreciate each other. Parties are just but vessels that we use to select the people that we want. But we remain the same. We remain Ugandans. We remain Ugandans. And that is one thing that I should be able to communicate to government, to communities, people who will be engaged in this. Let us appreciate love, peace, and be able to be stewards of grace, stewards of promotion of peace.
Thank you very much, David, for your insightful submission on how Caritas Uganda is contributing to peace building and conflict resolution within the country. And to our viewers, thank you for tuning in. Let's keep in mind to dialogue and reconcile whenever we wrong one another in order to maintain peace. Peace is very key in our sustainability and development of our country. Until next time, I've been Flavia Kunihira, your host.